Shigesato Itoi's vision for the original Mother was to create a counterpoint to another game series he really enjoyed but had one minor problem with: Dragon Quest. Why was it that all role-playing games that were popular at the time had swords and magic? In Itoi's words, RPGs in a medieval Europe setting are definitely flourishing these days, but I don't know anything about medieval Europe, and I suspect no one else does either, if you want to know the truth. It seems that everyone just bases their ideas off famous works like The Lord of the Rings. So I thought, if I'm going to make something, then a modern story would be far more interesting. Itoi started thinking about what kinds of things he would do if he made the same sort of game, and Mother was born as a result. Mother 3 still very much follows in this idea of a modern story, but it embraces its inspiration much more than the games that preceded it. Do you remember that strange comment about a giant dragon sleeping underneath the Nowhere Islands? That wasn't just a local legend. The insignia etched into the Forest Prayer Sanctuary signifies the island's very real protector, dubbed the Dark Dragon. According to Ionia, the dragon's power was too great for humans to control, so the Magypsies' ancestors put it to sleep with 7 magical needles, one for each of the separate Magypsies to guard. A Magypsie's millennia-long life is bound to the needle they protect, too. So once theirs is finally released, they cease to be, a reality their kind reveres rather than resents. Lucas, and by extension his twin brother Klaus, are the so-called chosen boys capable of pulling these needles and freeing the dragon, because they harness an exclusive psi ability that not even Magypsies can use, PK Love. It is said that if the person who pulls the needles possesses an evil heart, then that evil will be passed on to the dragon, who will fulfill their ambitions no matter how wicked. However, the opposite is also true. If the dragon is awakened by a person with a heart of good, then the fate of all evil will be washed away, and all life as we know it will shine brightly. Master Porky somehow heard about this wish-granting dragon and its needles, likely directly from Facade/Locria, the fallen Magypsy, before learning that Klaus, his newly reconstructed slave, is able to pull them. So Mother 3's final chapters, 7 and 8, become a race between Lucas and his robotized brother to see who can pull the majority of these needles and become the dragon's master. It's a classic fight for the fate of the world. What's really interesting though is that this isn't necessarily a battle between good and evil, because while Porky himself is evil, Klaus isn't. As the masked man, he knows nothing but to follow Porky's orders. The masked man has no heart of his own, both figuratively and literally, as neither Ionia or Mixolydia can sense it from him, and both of his battle themes are missing a heartbeat. Thankfully, Itoi has revealed what he imagines would have happened if the heartless masked man won. According to Itoi, everything, even the breath of life itself, would go extinct. Even the dragon too. That is a horrifying thought. It's an ending Itoi says he couldn't write, because it would mean that he himself would no longer be alive. Reality would cease to be forever. It's possible that Porky could have known this, but I don't think so. Because the Magypsies don't even consider the possibility of one without a heart pulling their needles. And during Porky's battle, he correctly asserts that if the dragon wakes up, it might end up destroying everything and extinguishing all life, before incorrectly claiming that he and the dragon would still survive as the last 2 living things in the world. He's supposedly more than willing to spend eternity with the Dark Dragon and nothing else. Because he's Porky, he's stubborn and childish enough to want that. But is he okay with utterly blipping out of existence? Whatever it is you think Locria told Porky, Lucas is informed here by Ionia, who's found bound and gagged at the beginning of Chapter 7, after being attacked by the opposition. Most players here likely make a beeline for where they're supposed to be headed next to get help. The game gives you an obvious way to fast travel to Aeolia's house and all, but wandering around Tazmily and speaking to others yields hilarious results, as why would you be taking your time talking to them when there's someone behind you bound in rope? Poor Ionia's hopping around trying to keep up with Lucas's sprinting. Even funnier is the fact that Lucas could have untied them, but nobody thought about it until they've reached their destination. Anyway, after getting Aeolia up to speed, and to Ionia's great surprise, The Magypsy begins to vanish when the masked man pulls the needle they guard, not well enough, clearly, in a Sohei castle. Considering how unexpected this was, Aeolia's genuine acceptance of their fate is nothing short of admirable, finding peace in death, along with turning the otherwise quote-unquote macho world of the game on its head, are themes Itoi wanted to portray with these characters. Before disappearing for good, Aeolia offers an underground passageway, leading directly to the castle's courtyard, so Lucas and Ionia can investigate. It is here, after an explanation from the Magypsy and upon discovering the masked man's transceiver, that the Nowhere Islands almost completely opens up to the player, as the next 4 needles can be visited in any order. There is a clear, linear path, as you are heavily encouraged to go to the Chimera Lab and reunite with Kumatora first, but you can head to Saturn Valley and save Duster before that if you don't mind facing the stronger enemies. If you're a glutton for punishment or just very, very patient, you can even skip them both and head straight to Tanetane Island as just a boy and his dog. If you're interested, I recently uploaded a video detailing the changes that occur when tackling Tanetane with different party members. For now though, I'm just going to go with the flow without sequence breaking. Don't worry, I will get to Tanetane towards the end. Besides that nightmare and certain floors of Porky's Tower to come, I'd say the Chimera Lab is probably the creepiest area in the game, because it's the birthplace of this game's impious chimeras. I've used plenty of footage of the interior already in previous episodes, but to paint the macabre picture and as an example, there are skeletons of mixed and matched monsters on display in one room, while another has full-bodied animals and animal parts stored in test tubes. Disconcertingly, we see that a good majority of the friendly Dragos from Chapter 1 ended up here. There's a skull of a young Drago, a fully grown Drago encased in ice, kept frozen and preserved alongside other animals, and tools next to an operating table with constraints big enough to hold a Drago for experimentation. On the top floor of the laboratory, there's a room with a glass divider that has a luxurious sitting area on one side, then an empty space with elevator access on the other. I think it's likely that this is supposed to be a viewing spot for whenever Porky himself visits the lab. Can you imagine scientists bringing up an abomination like the Horsantula while Porky watches with a big dumb grin on his face? Just let your hatred for him work as fuel for the semi-final battle. Oh, and speaking of, this memo about the kind of chimeras I want implies that Porky eats them, as he requests chimeras with a decent flavor and scent. Talk about twisted, but I guess as Lucas you can technically eat chimeras too, with hot dog sushi. The Chimera Lab is also where the game changes genres to survival horror, because eventually, Lucas and company will be clued in about the scariest thing in the entire building being set loose by our old friend Salsa the Monkey. It makes every pig mask fear for their lives, and for good reason. The ultimate chimera is the biggest and baddest of all their creations. A huge red demon at the top of the food chain. It has a ridiculously gigantic maw that can instantaneously incapacitate anything that comes within its reach. The best way to tell if you're safe is by listening. If all you can hear are the sounds of pig masks squealing, caused by the ultimate chimera's roaring, then you're actually safe, as that means it's in another room chasing some other poor sap. However, if the music starts back up again like normal, then you need to evacuate, because that means the thing's really close. Thankfully, this battery-operated beast does have a weakness with the off switch on its back, but the bird perched on top is able to move on its own volition, so it easily resets its ferocious friend after Salsa powered it down to save us. There's no need to worry though, as it's no longer in the lab. Or perhaps that's precisely why we should be more worried. An ultimate chimera-sized hole and an immobilized pig mask let us know that this machine made for murder is now out somewhere in the wild. This can bring about an anxious tension in new players, because it means that at any given point in the story moving forward, this killing chimera could pop out of nowhere. The pig mask's protocol for if it ever did escape essentially boils down to give up. So what if it's encountered later, as some climactic boss fight right before the end? Hey, if it took Porky's place in line, it could have been called the penultimate chimera, but that doesn't happen. The next and last time you'll dance with this devil is comical, as it bursts out of a thunderbox in Porky's all-you-can-pee toilet dungeon. I think it's genius, as the total surprise does still offer a scare despite your surroundings. I know some fans would have liked a cooler send-off for this monster, but meeting it again in a restroom maze just feels very Mother to me. I've already talked about the Masked Man and Facade's rebirth in Chapter 5, so go watch that episode if you haven't already, but I think it's now time to skip ahead to the moment I'm sure many of you have been waiting for, Tanetane Island. Oh, wait, there is one more very important thing to mention before that, and it is these scary stories these Frightbots tell in order to torture the Mr. Saturns. I'd go into further detail, but they're admittedly a little too dark for me and this series. Their pants-wettingly scary story in particular is what many cite as the reason Mother 3 hasn't had an official localization yet. The exact content of these spine-tingling stories are left to the player's imagination, but the ESRB would have to give the game an M rating for the implications alone. Whoops, they accidentally told a cute, funny story. Joking aside, the next segment I want to talk about is absolutely not played for laughs. Well, what happens at our destination isn't. The journey to get to Tanetane, which involves crossing the ocean floor, is still filled with shenanigans. Specifically these oxygen supply machines, modeled after Mermen, who must give you an exaggerated lip lock for air. And instead of a fade to black, the screen turns pink when you use them. These Mermen machines were made for the Pigmask army, and oxygen refills have to be required frequently for underwater patrol. So why were they designed this way? Because its creator thought it was funny? Or did they think it would be enjoyable? This Navy squeal towards the surface seems to like them, which begs the question, why is a Centaur variant with the same function found in Porky's fan room? That thought is more blood-curdling than the Frightbots stories. So let's move along to Master Eddie, the guardian deity of the sea and his unwinnable boss fight. After your team whittles down the sentient whirlpool's health enough, he'll summon an inescapable vortex that knocks everybody out. Luckily, they're saved by the aforementioned oxygen machines. See, these things aren't that bad, but all of our heroes' items floated away because of the attack. And, as a nearby frog points out, who's having a bit of a crisis himself, you are all at death's door with 1 hit point remaining. Assuming your full party's with you, Kumatora will be the one to suggest that the lot of them search for something nearby to eat, so that they can all recover their strength. But as it's too dangerous to backtrack, and with a rotten zombie shroom blocking the way forward, the only edible food that's available are these fresh, funky looking mushrooms. Yes, they're a sickly purple color, but hey, what could go wrong? Everything. After consumption, Lucas and his friends are suddenly overcome by an odd sensation. The world around them twists and bends while psychedelically changing color, until they pass out again face down on the ground, before waking up in an altered reality where the trees and the ocean have turned a vibrant pink, while roaming monsters appear as familiar faces, taking the form of our protagonist's friends and family. There's post boxes to peek into with disturbing messages and erratic descriptions within, repeating uncomfortable phrases over and over again, not unlike the previous game's final boss fight. This is my favorite segment of Mother 3, because so many of these lines still send chills down my spine. Inside the mailbox were countless screams. Inside the mailbox was the sound of yourself crying. Inside the mailbox was absolutely nothing. Nothing after nothing came bursting out. And that's just the stuff that's generally terrifying. It gets even worse, as the visions of loved ones dig deep into the personal traumas these characters have endured, especially Lucas. His missing brother Klaus appears several times, and looks just as he would have if he had the chance to grow up normally. He'll allude to his supposed death, telling Lucas that he's the Klaus you can't see, and that Lucas should touch his beating heart. The twins' deceased mother is mentioned a few times when an illusion of their father asks why she hasn't returned home yet, and blames Lucas, then himself, and Lucas again, for her disappearance. Finally, there's a couple of lines where this phony Flint is outright abusive, telling his son that Daddy's going to beat him. You could call this place the game's equivalent to Moonside, because it's a mind-bending version of a real in-game place. However, while Moonside was eerie with disconcerting undertones, The Tanetane hallucinations are overtly evil. Some of the dialogue is similarly nonsensical, sure, but a lot of it isn't. Everyone's waiting for you. Everyone's waiting to throw rocks at you, spit on you, and make your life hell. Who's everyone? Everyone you love. This line right here was inspired by one of Itoi's greatest fears. If I had to say what my worst kind of nightmare might be, it would involve my friends and family all being evil. Before revealing this, he mentions having tried to tone down the initial temporary dialogue used in Tanetane just enough by rewriting it, because the text was so unpleasant to look at. It's crazy to think that what we ended up getting here is the toned down version, but it's easier to imagine when considering that while she's mentioned by name, the party encounters no hallucinations of Hinawa. Tanetane certainly pushes the envelope as is, but the ways in which Lucas's mom could have been used are gut-wrenching to envision. What if an apparition of her appeared to directly tell Lucas that she didn't love him anymore? Or to ask why he couldn't save her, with her sprite then changing to something akin to the zombie lookalike back in Chapter 2 before attacking? The possibilities for opening up that wound even further are endless. With all this said, I'm not unhappy Itoi supposedly held back. I appreciate the equilibrium this game maintains as to not go too far. One of the reasons I feel Mother 3 works so well in its emotional delivery is the fact that no matter how grim things get, there's always a silly or heartwarming counterbalance around the corner. If Tanetane was all pain, without one of the post boxes containing lots of pretty butterflies for example, it'd be too much to stomach at once. You could say that Mother 3 is a master in portraying its dark aspects. That was a little long-winded, so maybe I need to be smacked upside the head like Lucas and his friends to snap out of the funk. To wrap things up here, after enduring everything on this gnarly island, the masked man still gets to pull its needle when he unfairly arrives via airship. At this point in the story, 5 of the 7 needles have already been pulled. The score? Masked Man 3, Lucas 2. This means that the stakes couldn't be any higher. Lucas has to pull the remaining 2, so that he'll have the majority required to pass his heart onto the dragon. Just one more needle is going to be pulled in this chapter though, with the very last one saved for the game's finale, of course. As the player, my next talking point becomes easiest to notice on what is the final return trip to Tazmily, because right now, Lucas's hometown is almost entirely vacant. At the beginning of this chapter, many of its original citizens were debating whether to pack their things and head for where the Pigmask leader resides, New Pork City. Gradually, as we've been pulling needles, or trying to, those thoughts have turned to actions, as more and more people begin to legitimately move there. And like a social contagion, those left behind didn't want to miss out on the promise for grandeur and decided to depart for the big city themselves. Towards the end of Chapter 7, Tazmily has finally been abandoned, save for a very few reluctant individuals and a mayor who's looking forward to ditching what he calls a miserable little village. A nearby sparrow reiterates the news while a slower, sad version of a song from Chapter 1, which was fittingly called Going Alone, plays in the background. This dispiriting new song, with the title And Then There Were None, replaces the forest track and even the similarly melancholic music that plays whenever Lucas's home is revisited by Lucas, evoking a true sense of emptiness, affirming the notion that this will be your last chance to explore Tazmily and its neighboring locales. Porky treated this village and everything in its vicinity like his personal playpen, or pigpen if you will, a place to house his toys to then leave behind when he loses interest. But developing the village and its surrounding areas was crucial to his endgame too, beyond his fascinating Chimera project that helped satiate his malice and boredom, along with his factories that aided domination and his grand goal of unearthing the Dark Dragon. Tazmily itself and its rapid rate of growth encouraged consumerism in the worst possible way. It awakened a purely materialistic mindset that has perhaps laid dormant within these people, who may have once hailed from a world reminiscent of ours, a world I think was the one from Mother 2. Porky slowly inculcated a widespread motivation to leave Tazmily, so that all of its residents would voluntarily flock to him. It all started off as an innocent question. There's nothing bad about having too much happiness, is there? The thought of a happy box simply adding to Abby's joy turned into the belief that a happy box is the cause for her joy. That change from contentment to an endless desire for more made the call of the big city irresistible. I don't mean to sound too cynical here, but I think replacing the holes in our lives with stuff and stimulation is an ever-increasing first world problem. And Porky just abused that mentality to herd all of Tazmily to his own sinister, ostentatious turf. Is there anything more depressing than all of this? Surprisingly, yes, as we get the chance to encounter what might just be the embodiment of depression itself, Negative Man. This self-loathing thing is a strange creature that wastes its turns in battle, lamenting life and his own uselessness. There's just no way I can win, he utters, defeated before actually being defeated. When or if he does attack, he'll inflict pitiful, negligible damage. He is obviously susceptible to crying too, and funnily or tragically enough, his theme is strong one. Even when he's dispatched, exiting the cave and re-entering proves that Negative Man will forever respawn, so you can never fulfill his dismal wish to just get rid of him. He will indefinitely suffer in solitude here. That's probably the saddest way I could end a video, right? Well, not quite, as we'll see next time on the dark aspects of Mother 3 finale. There is still so much more to talk about, so I hope that I'll see you all then. Hey, real quick before I transition to the credits, I just wanted to remind you all that I do have a Patreon page, which is how your name can be included at the end of my videos. Beyond that, it directly supports the channel by helping fund what it costs to do what I do. Thank you to my most recent patrons, Caleb and Dat Barry, and to everyone out there who supported this series by watching it. Let's meet again for Dark Aspects of Mother 3, Chapter 8.